All right, this is video number 2 of drawing through the 27 amendments. I have flipped over my paper, and now I am going to start drawing amendments 13 through 27. If it helps you out, you could totally go through and number these pages, but hopefully you'll see why I'm going to hold off, because we only have 12 spaces and we need to get 13 through 27. That's like 14 spaces. Okay, so I'm just going to start with 13, 14, and 15 to start. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment is after the American Civil War, and it has to do with the issue of emancipation for former African slaves. At the bottom of this, I'm going to write emancipation plus civil rights amendments, because that's what these amendments are known as. After and during the American Civil War, the issue was slavery. So the Emancipation Proclamation is going to free slaves that are in states in rebellion, but the ultimate goal is the 13th Amendment, which was going to end slavery in pretty much every form in the United States. The largest group, and pretty much the only group in U.S. history that was affected by chattel slavery or person property slavery, were African Americans. So it's after this time that they start to develop the Civil Rights Amendments and trying to begin the process of healing the nation, but also healing the relationship between former slaves, now and then known as African Americans, and people that had once probably been some slave owners. So the 14th Amendment is going to be after slavery is ended, rights of citizenship are given to former slaves. These rights are given, and one of these rights is going to lead to the 15th Amendment, which is our right and responsibility to vote. And the 15th Amendment is going to say that a person's right to vote cannot be based on race or former terms of servitude. Okay? Again, these are known as the Civil Rights Amendments. And these are just a start. They're obviously not going to heal all of the nation's problems. This is still something that is being fought today. The the gift in quotation marks of rights comes natural to some and has to be fought over for others. Okay, and we're still doing some of those fights today. Okay, amendment number 16 is going to be about the sorry, I'm forgetting for a second. It is going to be about income taxes. And income taxes are going to be the portion of your pay that goes towards funding the government. This is to help pay for roads. This is to help pay for schools. This is to help keep our government and our society flowing smoothly. Okay, and nobody likes to pay taxes, but we all unfortunately do. Okay, number 16 is the establishment of income taxes. As well as the right of Congress and of the federal government to decide where and how those taxes will be collected. Okay, number 17, and I'm going to draw a line because I'm going to separate this space into 3 up here. Number 17 is going to be a change up. If you remember the Magna Carta discussion on how Parliament had 2 houses, the United States had a similar situation. And the 17th Amendment was where states were not allowing their senators to be chosen directly by the people, but sometimes they were chosen by that lower House of Representatives. So the 17th Amendment, regular citizens not those House of Representative members would choose senators. And this would be done by an election process and not by a process done in the House of Representatives. This is, again, more representation for the common person. Okay, number 18, as well as the later number 21, has to do with, and I'm just going to write 21 here, the prohibition and repeal of alcohol. At one point in our nation's history, the social problems that were going on were blamed in a sort on people's drinking and people's consumption of alcohol. So, in the early 1920s, they actually prohibited the drinking and sale of alcoholic drinks. This led to some good things, but this also led to some bad things. because it led to an increased rise of organized crime and smuggling, because the people that were going to drink were pretty much going to drink anyways. They didn't care where they were getting their alcohol at that point. It wasn't until much later, and even still partially, that states repealed or got rid of the alcohol ban. So in the 18th Amendment, alcohol was made illegal, and in the 21st Amendment, it was repealed and made partially illegal in most states. Okay, Utah is a special example where the consumption of alcohol has to take place, or the sale of alcohol has to take place in designated spaces. Okay, we're now going to talk about the 19th and 20th Amendment. So the 19th Amendment is closely tied to the Civil Rights Amendments up here, okay, and more so the right to vote. Women gained the right to vote in the 20th Amendment. This is a weird looking lady. This is often called the right of suffrage. So women gained the right of suffrage, which is being able to participate in the political process by voting. It should be said that up here in the 15th Amendment, I just don't want to cause any confusion, but up here in the 15th Amendment, it was only African men at that time in 1860, or the 1860s. Okay, 20 through 27, we are going to split these in half. Hopefully we are able to get through these amendments quickly, so I don't have a super long video. Okay, 20th Amendment has to do with what they call a lame duck. The presidential inauguration used to take place in March because, based off of precedent, something that's happened before, that is when Washington first took office. Senate and other elected officials begin in January, so sometimes there is cause for conflict between two competing political parties, and the 20th Amendment was when there was some conflict between some competing political parties, and they decided to start the presidential term in January as well. So, because I don't necessarily have a way to draw the presidential term starting in January, I'm just writing it out for number 20. Sometimes they call that period between January when Senate starts and March when presidents of old started the lame duck period. Sometimes they still call it the lame duck period today, when a president will kind of be stuck in the pond, but a new government or new group has come to power and they aren't able to push their agenda as much. Okay, we did 21. Number 22 has to do with presidential as well and presidential terms, and that is that a president is limited to 8 years or 2 terms? Okay. We do not want one person in power for too long of a time for fear of corruption and malfeasance, as well as our general fear of monarchy. Again, having to do with president, Washington, D.C. did not have votes for the longest time, even though it had citizens of the United States living there in our nation's capital. Washington, D.C. gained an electoral vote, one electoral vote for the Electoral College. With the 23rd Amendment. This is so that the citizens living in Washington, D.C. were able to use their power to elect a president that would live right down the street from them. Okay. Number 24 has to do with the ability to vote as well. And that ability to vote, I'm surprised it took so long to do this, but should not be limited to those that can pay to vote. It is illegal to charge people to vote. This was something that some states would do on basis of racism, and some states would do on basis of religion, and just poll taxes are a bad thing, and glad they got rid of them with the 24th Amendment. No poll taxes. Okay. We are almost done. 25, 26, and 27. If the president were to die or be unable to lead for a remainder or for a amount of time, the president could hand over power, or his cabinet or her cabinet could decide that the president is unable to lead for a amount of time, and they can hand over presidential powers to the vice president. If the vice president is unable to, then it goes to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, and it continues along those lines. Okay, that is the 25th Amendment. It is presidential succession. It also allows the president to choose a vice president if their vice president dies or is unable to lead at the same time. Okay, number 26. Again, has to do with the issue of voting. It was not until the 26th Amendment that states came up with a consensus or an agreement on how old an American citizen needs to be able to vote. And it is decided that 18 years old is enough to be given the vote, the right to vote. Number 27. is our last amendment thus far. There can always be more through the amendment process. But number 27 has to do with Senate increasing its own pay. Senate is unable, and Congress is unable to increase its own pay through votes until the next election cycle. It is no increase in pay until after the next election. Okay. All right. These are the 27 amendments. We got through them in 20 minutes. Be sure to ask your teacher if you have any questions regarding these 13 additional amendments.